Hey, before you settle in, take a moment to imagine this. You bite into something that looks like a bean. It is not sweet. It is not creamy. It is intensely bitter, almost unpleasantly so. And yet, someone, somewhere, thousands of years ago, looked at that same bitter bean and decided, this will become one of the most loved foods on Earth. Why? How? And what strange journey turned a bitter rainforest seed into the chocolate bar hiding in your kitchen drawer right now? That is exactly what we are going to uncover. But first, if you love little, curious histories like this one, go ahead and hit subscribe. And drop a like. It helps these stories reach more people who wonder about the strange origins of ordinary things. Now, dim the lights, take a breath, and let's walk slowly into the surprisingly strange history of chocolate. And so the secret did not die. It traveled. Not in the way spices travel, loud and obvious on merchant scales, but quietly, like a rumor passed between trusted lips. The Maya received that bitter knowledge from the Olmecs and did something unexpected. They did not soften it. They did not sweeten it. Instead, they knelt before it. They called their drink xocolātl, bitter water, a name that offers no apology. And then they poured it into tall, elegant cylinders, decorated with glyphs that named the vessel's purpose for all eternity. This was not a morning pick-me-up. This was worship. Imagine standing at the edge of a Maya ceremony. The air is thick with incense. A noble raises a cup, dark liquid sloshing against its rim. He does not gulp. He does not smile. He drinks slowly, deliberately, as if swallowing something that burns and blesses at the same time. The cacao is mixed with chili, with vanilla, with flowers and ground maize. It is bitter, yes, but also complex. A taste that rewards patience. And then comes the foam. Thick, frothy, poured from height in a slow cascade that feels almost indecent to watch. In that moment, foam is not texture. Foam is status. A flat drink is an embarrassment. A foamy drink whispers wealth, skill, and intimacy with the gods. Because the Maya believed cacao was divine. It appears in their creation myths, a gift from the gods after humans were formed from maize. It appears in marriage ceremonies, binding couples with something bitter and binding. And it appears in tombs. Archaeologists have scraped the insides of ancient burial vessels and found cacao residue, still clinging after 1,000 years. Someone was buried with chocolate. Someone believed they would wake in the underworld and want for nothing. There is something achingly human about that. Not the grand temples or the carved monuments, but the small, desperate hope that a bitter drink might comfort you even in death. You begin to understand why the Maya guarded their cacao trees, why they planted them in shaded orchards beneath the canopy, hidden like lovers. Because chocolate was never just food. It was a secret language between the living and the dead, between those who ruled and those who served. And when you drank it, you were not consuming. You were communing. The Maya knew that bitterness does not push you away. It pulls you closer, asking you to lean in, to try again, to discover what hides beneath the sharpness. And what hides beneath is power. Power that would soon flow north, into the hands of an empire that did not grow cacao but conquered it. The Aztecs were watching, and they were hungry. The secret did not remain hidden in the rainforest for long. From the Olmecs, it passed to the Maya, and with the Maya, the bitter bean became something stranger. It became sacred. You can almost feel the shift if you close your eyes and imagine a Maya city at dusk. The pyramids rise above the jungle canopy, their limestone steps still warm from the day sun. Inside a quiet chamber, a priest pours a dark liquid from one vessel to another, lifting it high so the stream catches the firelight. He is not making a drink. He is performing. The foam that gathers on top is not accidental. It is the entire point. Thick, frothy, almost obscene in its richness. To serve chocolate without foam would be like offering a prayer without faith. Unthinkable. The Maya called it xocolātl, bitter water, a name that tells you everything and nothing. Because bitterness, to them, was not a flaw. It was a proof. Proof that this drink came from somewhere beyond the ordinary. They mixed it with chili peppers, with vanilla, with honey when they could find it, and with the ground kernels of maize. But they never hid the bitterness completely. That would be dishonest. Instead, they let it sit on the tongue, sharp and demanding, while the foam softened the blow. Drinking it was an act of endurance. And endurance, the Maya knew, was its own kind of pleasure. What makes this chapter so unsettlingly intimate is how the Maya treated Cacao in death. Archaeologists have opened tombs, expecting to find jade and obsidian. And they have. But they have also found something softer. Vessels stained with ancient chocolate residue, placed carefully beside the dead. Imagine loving something so much that you ask to take it with you into the dark. Not gold. Not power. A drink. Bitter, earthy, and utterly human. The Maya believed cacao was a gift from the gods, given to them after the creation of the first people from maize. But gifts can be refused. Chocolate was not refused. It was clutched close, carried into burial chambers, and left there like a whispered promise. So the Maya drank. They poured. They foamed. They buried. And through all of it, chocolate became something more than a crop. It became a language between the living and the dead, between the priest and the divine, between two people sharing a single cup in the flickering dark. You can almost taste the tension in that exchange. The way a sip of bitter chocolate can feel like a confession. But the Maya would not keep this secret forever. To the north, an empire was rising. An empire that could not grow cacao but would learn to covet it with a hunger that bordered on obsession. The Aztecs were coming. And when they arrived, chocolate would stop being a prayer. It would become money. The Aztecs were coming, and they brought with them a hunger that the Maya had never needed. Because the Aztecs, for all their power, could not grow cacao. Their capital, Tenochtitlan, sat high in the cool mountain valleys of central Mexico, far from the humid lowlands where cacao trees whispered and sweated. The land refused to cooperate. So the Aztecs did something both practical and ruthless. They demanded cacao as tribute. Conquered regions, those warm, wet territories along the southern edges of the empire, were required to send thousands upon thousands of beans to the imperial capital. Chocolate became a tax, a debt paid in bitterness. Imagine walking through the great market of Tlatelolco, the air thick with the smell of maize, obsidian, and sweating bodies. Merchants called out their prices, but they did not always reach for coins. Instead, they reached for small, dark beans. A tamale cost a few beans. A rabbit, perhaps 30. A turkey, 100. Cacao was no longer just a drink. It was currency. Portable, valuable, and strangely intimate. You could press a bean into a stranger's palm and walk away with dinner. You could save them in a clay pot, counting them slowly at night like a miser counting gold. And like all currency, cacao attracted fraud. Hollowed shells filled with dirt. Beans that looked real but crumbled at the touch. Inspecting your chocolate became a quiet art, a moment of suspicion between buyer and seller. But the Aztecs did not only spend cacao. They drank it. And here the story takes a darker, more suggestive turn. The Emperor Moctezuma too was said to consume dozens of cups each day. Not for pleasure, at least not the kind you might imagine. Cacao contains compounds that wake the body, that sharpen the mind, that stir something restless beneath the skin. The Aztecs believed chocolate could prepare warriors for battle, could give stamina to travelers, could even ignite desire. Some accounts whisper that Moctezuma drank chocolate before entering his chambers with his many wives. Whether true or not, the reputation clung to cacao like smoke. It became a drink of power, of endurance, of things whispered behind closed curtains. And because the Aztecs could not grow it, they had to control it. Every bean that arrived at Tenochtitlan carried the sweat of conquered lands. Every sip of bitter chocolate reminded the drinker that the empire demanded and the empire received. Chocolate had been sacred to the Maya. Now it was political. Now it was economic. Now it was a chain linking the emperor's golden cup to the aching backs of farmers in distant rainforests. But the Aztecs did not know that across the ocean, strangers were watching. The Spanish had landed, and they had developed a taste for something the Aztecs had never imagined. Sweetness. Sweetness. The Spanish had landed on the shores of Mexico in 1519, and they brought with them something the Aztecs never thought to add to their bitter cups. Sugar. At first, the conquistadors did not understand cacao. They watched the Aztecs pour dark, foamy liquids from golden vessels. They tasted the sharp bite of chili and the earthy bitterness of roasted beans, and they winced. One Spanish chronicler described the drink as something more fit for pigs than men. But they noticed something else. The way the Aztecs prized the beans. The way markets accepted them as currency. The way Moctezuma sipped his chocolate with an almost ceremonial slowness, as if the bitterness itself was a kind of authority. So the Spanish began to experiment. quietly at first, in the kitchens of colonial monasteries. A nun here, a friar there, grinding cacao beans and mixing the paste not with water and chili, but with warm milk and cane sugar. The transformation was astonishing. The bitterness did not disappear entirely. It lingered, like a memory, like a shy guest who refuses to leave. But the sugar softened it, rounded its edges, turned a punishing sip into something almost tender. And when they added cinnamon and vanilla, the drink began to smell like the old world, like the spice markets of Seville, like the warm kitchens of home. Chocolate was no longer a test of endurance. It was becoming a seduction. The Spanish kept this new drink secret for nearly 100 years. They did not share it with the English or the French or the Dutch. It was theirs. A dark, sweet luxury sipped behind the high walls of aristocratic estates. Serving chocolate became a performance. Silver stirring rods, delicate porcelain cups, and the slow, deliberate act of pouring from height to create that same foam the Maya had once revered. But now the foam carried no prayers. It carried status, wealth, the quiet confidence of someone who has tasted something you have not. There is a tension in that secrecy, a thrill of exclusion. The Spanish knew they held a secret from a new world, sweetened and tamed, and they were not ready to let it go. But secrets have a way of leaking. By the 1600s, chocolate had crossed the Pyrenees into France, where the young Louis XIV reportedly drank it in his gilded chambers. It reached Italy, where the clergy debated whether drinking chocolate broke the fast. Some priests argued that pleasure was the enemy of piety. Others pointed out that the drink was not food, it was medicine, a convenient loophole. And so chocolate slipped past the gates of heaven on a technicality, warm and sweet and faintly sinful. The drink of Aztec emperors, of Maya priests, of Olmec dreamers, had become the drink of Europe. And it was only the beginning, because chocolate would not remain a liquid for long. The bar was coming, and when it arrived, nothing would taste the same.